Sandeep, is this being live streamed in Facebook as well?
Yes.
And is
Yes.
that where most of our parents are joining us from?
Yep.
Okay. So Sagun, can you please monitor the Facebook page? And if they have any questions, just post that in the chat window. Okay. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the third edition of the Adhyayan webinar series. Thank you all for being here today on a Saturday. It is so nice to see that we have engaged parents in our school. My name is Chandika Bhandari, and I'm going to be hosting the webinar today. I'm actively involved in Adhyayan School, and I'm also the president at Leapfrog Technology. I grew up in a small village just west of Gokarna and was lucky enough to get access to great education throughout my life. Even though we were a lower middle class family, I was fortunate to study at Galaxy and high school in Dehradun, India. After that, I completed my bachelor's degree from BYU in the US. I worked at Microsoft for 10 years before joining Leapfrog. I truly believe that education is the greatest equalizer in life, and I'm proud to be an active contributor in educating the next generation through Adhyayan School. We have been conducting these webinars to learn and share innovative educational perspectives from local and international personalities. Our goal is to help with the adoption of design thinking and technology throughout Nepal, not just at Adhyayan. At Adhyayan School, our vision and our mission are to introduce innovative thinking, leadership, and hands-on learning at a young age and contribute to developing leaders of tomorrow. Adhyayan School is Nepal's first design thinking and technology-focused school. Adhyayan's preschool is Nepal's first Reggio Emilia-inspired preschool. Today's webinar will be in the panel discussions format. We will take questions from the audience through the chat window. The webinar will be 1 hour in length. This webinar will also be hosted live on the Adhyayan Facebook page. We also have a very special announcement to make today. Innovation in education is all about improving student outcomes, helping teachers deliver learning better, and engaging parents in their children's growth. So we'll try to cover various topics like student development, teacher and professional development, and parents' involvement in their children's education. We will talk about how innovative technology, content, and instructional models will help Adhyayan become a role model school. Our panelists will share their experience and insights, and their continued involvement will be key to continually improving learning experiences for students and all other stakeholders at Adhyayan School. We do have an amazing panel today, so without further delay, let's get started by introducing our panelists. Let me introduce the first of our 3 panelists today, Dr. Mark Luetzelschwab. Dr. Mark Luetzelschwab is a pioneer in education technology. Over the 25 years, he has created leading edge technologies for assessment, personalized learning, blended learning, online learning, and more. Mark was the previous head of Global Education Solution at Amazon. He was also the Senior Vice President for Digital Solutions at College Board, the organization that is responsible for conducting SAT-1 and SAT-2 tests all over the world. Wow. He holds a PhD in instructional technology from the University of Texas at Austin, and master's and bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering from RPI, and a bachelor's in physics from Dickinson College. At this time, before I go further, I would like to request the principal of Adhyayan, Mr. Sandeep Sharma, to make a very exciting announcement.
Thank you. Thank you, Chandika. A very good morning to all from Nepal. I know it's a little late in the US, so thanks for joining whoever has joined from the US as well. Everyone at Adhyayan School is very delighted, and I'd like to make this announcement here today. We're very proud to announce that Dr. Mark will be joining Adhyayan School as a Chief Innovation Advisor. So Dr. Mark, welcome to the family. His presence and support will help Adhyayan continue to use technology and design thinking to innovate, as well as stay ahead and relevant to create holistic educational outcomes for students, parents, teachers, and as well as the support staff. We believe that Dr. Mark's extensive experience and expertise in education technology will be highly valuable as Adhyayan organically grows to live our dream to become one of the role model schools in Nepal. We look forward to the things that we can accomplish together. Again, Dr. Mark, welcome to the team. Welcome aboard. Thanks, Chandika.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandeep. And we're so excited that you're joining the school, Mark. And thank you, Sandeep, for so before I introduce other panelists, I do want to hear briefly from Mark. So Mark, I have a question for you to get us started. I know you spent most of your life in education and other related fields. How did you go from nuclear physics to education?
Well, actually, I started majoring in physics at Dickinson College. I grew up around Dickinson. My father's a professor there, so I grew up in the world of science and physics. But as I started my freshman year there, I was invited to be a student in one of the first hands-on technology-driven science classes ever done. And the experience was amazing. We got to do inquiry-based learning where we were discovering science as students instead of being told science. So instead of a lecture, we were given a lab. And the labs guided us through experiences, and we were able to discover the formulas of the basics of science. And this kicked off with a really strong interest in me around how to use technology and learning, because one of the things we found out is that the results at Dickinson, which is a liberal arts college, where most of the students were majoring in poetry, and English, and political science, they would take physics because they couldn't get into astronomy or biology. They wouldn't want to be there. But the results of this inquiry-based education were significantly better than the Harvard physics majors. And so I got involved there, continued my work, started working for that professor. And when I went to RPI, they asked me to help with their use of technology in education. And somewhere along the way, a fellow came through our lab. We had lots of visitors through our labs because we were doing really cool things. And he asked, do you want to start a company? And that was 26 years ago. We started building edtech solutions, CDs, websites, things like that for publishing companies, and focused a lot, of course, on the sciences. So we had a specialty in doing the sciences. And that kicked off my career being a world leader in education technology. So ever since then, I've just been following that pathway. I do bring some of the sciences in many times, and it's great to get involved continuously with science classes and science education as well.
Oh, wonderful, Mark. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot about that, in a little bit. Thank you for being here today again. I know it's also late for you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. All right, so let me introduce our second panelist, Mr. Himal Karmacharya. Himal is the founder and chairman of Leapfrog Technology, where we both work together. He holds a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science from MIT. He's an executive with a lot of experience in leading and scaling technology teams. He has led or started 3 largest software companies in Nepal, D2 Hakai, Deerwalk, and now Leapfrog. His last project for Nepal was in mobile banking, and it received 2 prestigious Asian awards, M-Billionth and Manthan. So Himal, you are a well-known technology personality in Nepal. I know that very well. What inspired you to be involved in the school?
Thank you, Chandika, for the nice introduction. I grew up in Sangja. I know some of our parents are also from Sangja. Sangja bazarलाई गाउँ त भन्न मिल्दैन, तर a normal path for my life would have been to grow up and be a small town trader, much in the mold of my father and his father before him. Many of my classmates from school are still back in Sangja or in the Middle East earning their living, but I was fortunate to be blessed with a curious mind and to be surrounded by teachers who encouraged that curiosity. Education opened bigger and better doors for me at each stage of my life. I came board 6th in SLC and then got into Birmingham School for O-levels. When it came time to apply for colleges, I was lucky to get into universities such as Oxford and MIT. I chose MIT and pursued a degree in computer science. After college, I got a job in Silicon Valley. So really, all the opportunities that came my way have been because of my education. That is why I'm really excited to be part of Adhyayan School. It allows me to impact education so that my story becomes possible for everybody in Nepal. It is also about doing something very important in a very important field and hopefully impacting lives.
Thank you, Himal, and welcome. Yeah, so last but not the least, our third panelist today is our own principal at Adhyayan School, Mr. Sandeep Sharma. Sandeep is one of the most innovative educators in Nepal's K-12 sector. He has been successful in infusing design thinking in K-12 and has introduced Reggio Emilia in early childhood for the very first time in Nepal. He believes in using technology as an enabler to learning, and that's really what he's been doing at Adhyayan. Sandeep has previously worked in communication and aviation industry in the US at L3 Harris & Collins Aerospace. He also serves on the board of directors of City Express and is a director at Orville Systems, Nepal. Sandeep received his bachelor's in electrical engineering from Virginia Tech and master's in system engineering and project management from Johns Hopkins University. So Sandeep, from Virginia Tech to Johns Hopkins to Collins Aerospace and to principal of the school, help us understand your journey.
Let me be very honest here, right? So if anyone actually had asked me what I would be doing when I'm 30 years old earlier in my life, principal of the school or being a principal would definitely not have been my answer. Well, however, like Steve Jobs said, we can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? So like going back, I mean, I always had a drive in me to do something in my country. I wanted to go above and beyond abroad and study and work there as well. But I always wanted to come back and do something for my community. So I think that is what pulled me back to my country and Nepal. And I think this was ingrained into me from my early childhood, from my education, starting from St. Xavier's onto Virginia Tech and Johns Hopkins. All these institutions, if we look at them, they give highest priority to not only learning, but serving to the community as well. Right. So when I moved back to Nepal, I started meeting a lot of people, wanted to meet like-minded folks and was looking for opportunities to get involved. So that is when I met Himal and the Leapfrog team overall. So at that time, they were thinking, you guys were thinking of getting into education technology. You were already involved in education technology outside of Nepal. And that is when you guys wanted to penetrate the sector in Nepal through K-12. And I found that very exciting. And I also wanted to be a part of it. And also realize at that point that there can't be any other way more powerful than getting into education to make a significant impact in the community and the country. So that is how we founded Adhyayan. Now, even though I get the tag of accidental principal here and there, I'm loving it so far. And it has been a tremendous journey, right? And it has been rewarding as well. And actually, I'm even more excited at the current state, looking into the future of Adhyayan with the partnership from the Leapfrog team and also the overall executive and the overall of Adhyayan team that we have put together now. I think the future looks better and brighter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sandeep. And obviously, what a great panel that we have today with Mark joining in as Chief Innovation Advisor for Adhyayan. I know his experience will be invaluable. And, we have Himal, who basically gave up his his high-paying job to go back to Nepal and start something in Nepal. And we have Sandeep, who kind of followed his footsteps. So it's such a wonderful team, and I'm very proud to be here today. So get your questions ready, guys. If you have any questions, we'll definitely try to incorporate that into the webinar. All right, so let's get into the thick of our webinar today. So the first topic that I want to talk about really is to get started and get Mark's perspective on what innovation in education means to him. Mark, if you can also include some thoughts around how you think you can help Adhyayan, that would be very useful for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, innovation in education isn't just doing things that are new just because they're new. It's really about using technology wisely. So there's so many ways you can use technology in the classroom. At its base level, tech can be used to present material. And, while it seems like it could be the same as writing on the board, you can start sharing things with other teachers at other schools across the country and across the globe. And so digital presentation has a lot of advantages, and things can move on the screen and get engaged with the students. So presentation using technology, even at its base level, has a lot of value. You see a lot of practice. So it allows people to repeatedly work on a particular task. So if they're trying to gather what we call fluency, right, the ability to do a task really without thinking about it. So you see that with reading, right? As you go through and you read, you eventually are able to do it without, stepping your finger across the letters. That practice is really easy to do using technology. Then the next level is simulations. Simulations are really a great way to tackle things which would be very difficult, very expensive, or very dangerous to do in the classroom. So if you wanted to have your preschoolers working with chemicals, that might not be a good idea. But you can use a simulation and let them explore. And so if they want to mix two chemicals and something blows up on the screen, it's great, it's fun. If it happened in the classroom, you'd probably have a little bit of a problem with the parents. Then really, then it kind of turns the corner and starts to look at inquiry. Inquiry-based learning is really, I think, where you can take technology and really drive some value to the learning process, where students are engaged in the learning process and discovery process. So they're not just being told what to do, they're starting to discover the concepts themselves. Then, of course, collaboration. So the tools like Google Classroom, Google Docs, these have really changed the entire way that people collaborate. I use them daily, and they've really changed our life. And of course, as we work together across different time zones, different parts of the world over the last few years, it's been just a great way of collaborating. And then the last way is, using it for creation. So when you have your students create using technology, that's one of the most powerful ways. When they take a concept they learn in any other way, whether it's just presented to them in person or they've learned it through technology or just from their friends, they take that knowledge and they begin to present it in a different way. They build a video, an audio file, a website. That's when you start to see technology really turn the corner from I'm learning something to I'm creating, or even I'm teaching. So like I said, when I started, it's about using it wisely. It's saying, what are we trying to accomplish? And work backwards from there. What kind of learnings we want? Do we want students to understand this material today? We want them to understand the concepts or the practice and really, get that level of learning, and then work backwards from there and apply technology in a wise and well-planned way.
Yeah, very, very, very wise words there, Mark. So, I love the things that you say about fluency and using technology where it makes sense, and, how it helps creation and collaboration and things like that. Like we have a lot of parents here, and our distribution of classes are from pre-K all the way to 10th grade. How does technology play a part in, that distribution of a school?
Well, I've seen some pretty interesting uses of technology at all levels. I worked on a project at KIPP LA in Los Angeles, where we had to get a bunch of kindergartners who couldn't read, who had limited technology ability, to use 4 different technology systems from 4 different providers and then get that data together in the way that a teacher could understand and pull it together. And so a challenge like that says, okay, how do you work with somebody who how do you get, they can't even log in, right? They can't type, they can't read, and so forth. So we had to create entire new interfaces on, they would click on the picture of their teacher and then click on the picture of themselves, and they would click on the picture of a soccer ball for their password. So we had to rethink all this. And so it then allowed them to engage with these tools, which they wouldn't have been able to engage with otherwise. So it's really saying, again, you're working backwards from what you do, what you want. In that case, we wanted to make sure they had the digital experience. They could learn at any pace that they wanted to, and the teachers had the data they had to support those students at all the times. So they weren't just working on the tech by themselves. They were working on the tech, but the teachers were seeing the data and were able to support the students when the students needed. And we had great results. Teachers loved the ability to know what the students were doing, when they were doing it, and so forth. And
Great.
all the way up through the spectrum, when you get into middle school, the collaboration, they begin to communicate and collaborate using Google Docs, for example, or Google Classroom. It's an amazing, eye-opening experience for them when they start to be able to collaborate on creating something. They don't even have to be sitting in the same room. But even if they do, we find people that are sitting in the same room collaborating on Google Docs because it's easier to collaborate using that than it is to do by hand.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
And then at the high school level, right, then it's really about helping the teachers get to know those students. So in a traditional classroom, you have teacher writing on a wall, and their back is to the students. In a technology-infused classroom, a lot of times, the students are doing a lot of the initial learning with their computers, but the teacher is always facing the students and getting to know those students and engaging with them. And at the high school level, a lot of it is just helping them, the students mature, and that conversation about the academics or even personal, by freeing up that time of the instructor, it has an amazing result. And so I can see that, from pre-K, middle to high school, there's different ways to use technology in different ways with different results.
Yeah, we're for sure excited about you coming on board, Mark. We're excited about what that means for Adhyayan, for sure. Sandeep, I want to hear from you. What does innovation mean to you in education?
Yeah, so from my perspective and also from Adhyayan's perspective, innovation in education, it's all about making leaders of tomorrow, right? And providing world-class access to education. We want to do not only provide the best teachers, content, and curriculum overall, we also want to measure and be accountable at the same time for student achievement and growth. At Adhyayan specifically, we have already started to take several initiatives to incorporate innovation for our students and teachers, like establishing a makerspace, design tinkering lab, design and technology lab. Mark mentioned, we've started using Google Classroom and Google Education Suite for collaborative efforts, and also project-based learning, including design thinking and Reggio Emilia, starting from the early childhood, right? Ultimately, we will continue to improve the way, different ways we deliver learning, different ways our teachers would teach, and also ways we will measure the students' outcome in the future. That's what actually innovation really means to me, and also for Adhyayan.
No, that's wonderful. So what I'm hearing you saying, Sandeep, is that, look, you have to continue to improve, but at the same time, you have to make sure that the students and parents and, the staff get, a coherent set of guidelines to make sure that they're achieving student outcomes, right? And your goal, from what I hear, is, improving all of those over time, measuring them and iterating them.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. No, that's great. All right, so let's hear from Himal. Himal has a very unique perspective around innovation, so would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, both Mark and Sandeep covered a lot of grounds there. Let me just hone in on one particular thing that I am pretty passionate about and hope to see a level of innovation that comes to that area over the next few years or so. So I believe different children learn at different speeds. All methods of teaching must respect, honor, and adhere to the fact that each child's mind is individual, with its own pacing, its own set of requirements, and particular needs and styles. So that is where technology can be a great enabler. I'll give you an example that many of you may already have heard of Salman Khan, who went on to start the Khan Academy. So I know Salman from MIT. He wanted to help his cousin Nadia, who flunked her maths assessment exams, because he found unit conversion very hard. So Nadia was put in a remedial math class. So Sal worked with her, teaching her maths over the next few months. So next year when Nadia took the exam again, she aced it and was actually put in the advanced math class. So that one intervention changed Nadia's life. Someone who was struggling in a group setting actually did better than the rest of the class after the right individualized help. So that there holds a very important lesson, I hope, for all of us. Technology is only useful when it allows students to learn, and students learn when they're engaged, find the material interesting, and have the right incentives. What would be a great innovation would be to utilize the flexibility afforded by modern technology to enable children, even when they're learning in a group setting, to process and conceptualize information and skills on an individualized basis.
Yeah, that's really very similar to what Mark has been saying as well. But what a cool story, about Nadia, Himal. That is great. So I do want to get some thoughts about this from Mark. So given Nadia's transformation, really, all of us are, with school because we want to see students transform into becoming great leaders for tomorrow. So what are some of the interesting, I don't know, maybe instructional models or interventions that you've seen, Mark, that have changed students' lives?
Well, I think I want to follow up on the personalization side of things. In a traditional classroom, everybody has their own background. And there's no way that a single teacher can personalize the instruction for every single student. However, with technology, that's possible. And even if you're just using technology for grouping students, it's a great way of doing it. I worked on a project a number of years ago with the Detroit Public Schools. Now, it may not provide context across the pond, but these are some of the worst schools in our country, where around 5% of the students were passing the exams total. So they were terrible. We were able to work with a group that took over those schools and create a completely personalized education where every student was able to work at their own pace. They were able to choose some of their own curriculum, so they started to take ownership of what they were doing. And they were monitored on how fast they were moving, not where they were, because every student came in there with a completely different background. And one of the most interesting innovations about that project was the ability to show the teachers what was going on. Because if you think about it now, instead of having one teacher talking to 30 students or so, and everybody being on the same page, all 30 of them are moving at a different pace. And so we had to create new ways to tell the teacher what's going on and how to interact with each of the students. So a student that was, let's call it behind, because maybe they were in module 1, but they were moving along at a good pace, was fine. Whereas a student that was ahead in module 10, but was moving very slowly or had started to slow down, may have needed some personal attention, and that's when the teacher would intervene. And so technology gives us this ability, and it had incredible results. And the second part of that same project was because it was online and we're using an LMS like Google Classroom, but it was a different experience for them. Students that in that case couldn't even get to the school, homeless kids, were finding a way to interact with the curriculum and continue their education. So these are students that would have had no future whatsoever, were able to move forward. And so we saw a complete turnaround in the students' attitudes, the way they behaved. Violence went down in the schools, behavioral problems went way down, scores went way up, all because we took the time to create something that worked for them, each individual student, instead of working for the system where everything was the same for everybody, because that was not working. I think that's one example of how it can really, really change people's lives. And the other one is one I mentioned earlier, is that, at the higher grade levels, at the high school levels, when the teachers spend more time getting to know the students because the technology allows that and encourage it, That is where it transitions. You all have a high school teacher you remember that helped you move forward. It was a relationship that drove you. It's a relationship, a partnership. And those, if we can facilitate those, that's a real powerful way of using technology.
Right. Yeah, my personal, it wasn't quite high school, but my English teacher in 7th grade probably completely transformed my life. So I know exactly what you're saying, Mark. So I have a follow-up question on personalized learning and the measurement of it, right? So you, you kind of have these individualized progress for each of the student, and the teacher gets an opportunity to intervene based on whether they're ahead or behind or whatever. How do you rationalize that in the context of an academic year? So in the US, for example, it's, like sessions, right? Summer, winter. In Nepal, for example, it's like a year. So how do you kind of time bound that kind of, how do you go from grade 1 to grade 2 and also incorporate personalized learning?
It's about meeting the students where they are. So in the US, of course, we have these regimented exams based on age. So at basically 8 or 9, roughly years old, you're given a certain test, and at 10 or 11, you're given another test, and so forth. In a true personalized manner, you start measuring students based on where you think they are. So put it on its head and say, instead of saying, let's test a kid because they just turned 8, let's test a kid because we think they've reached this level in math. The grade levels are great for keeping kids of the same age together because from a maturity standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, that support is really important to keep those kids grouped. But the technology allows a kid who's 8 and struggling in math and a kid who's 8 and doing really well in math to be in the same area so they can be friends and help each other. But they can each have their own pace and their own experience.
Okay. No, that makes sense, Mark. Thank you. Yeah, that at least I've been thinking, I've always thought about that and couldn't quite rationalize it. Thank you so much. Sandeep, continuing on the transformation topic, student transformation topic, I'm sure you get to see transformations every day at Adhyayan. Do you have some examples that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So something similar to what Himal and Mark mentioned before. So one scenario comes to my mind immediately. This was a couple of years back. There was a time right around the time when we started using Khan Academy at Adhyayan. We were trying out various models and various ways of how to use it, right, in a medium of blended learning. How do we incorporate blended learning, and how do you incorporate Khan Academy at the same time? And what we decided to pick grade 8 as they were preparing for the government exam. So like Mark mentioned, we have a government exam that the students have to face at grade 8 and grade 10 after grade 8, right? So we picked grade 8 and we decided to pick one subject that would be math, because Khan Academy is their strength is mathematics. And also because mathematics was a subject for grade 8 students, because they were having a lot of trouble, right? Not everyone was up to speed. And like Himal mentioned, students actually do learn at different pace and different models, right? So at first what we did was we divided the class, grade 8, into 2 groups. One group had the students who were comparatively better in maths and were doing well. And the second group had the students who were struggling a little bit. And we followed the lab rotation model where one group would go to the lab, technology lab, and they would go through the Khan Academy modules assigned to them based on their learning capacity and learning speed. While the other group would learn at the physical classroom with the physical teacher present with the props and everything, chalk and talk, right? However, surprisingly, right, because it was such a short span of time, it was only the first terminal, that's 3 months, we could not see significant progress or change in the results, right, that we expected. Our expectation was, okay, we were adapting to a new modality and this would give immediate results, right? But that was not the case. So we went back to the drawing board and again, like brainstormed on what's happening and what are the gaps. So after talking to the team, we decided that I think we should try a little bit different approach, because this is the first time we're introducing this model to the students, and also Khan Academy is a little newer. It's not only to the students, but also to the teachers. So we reshuffled the group and paired the students up. So a struggling student would partner with a student from the other group, right? Who comparatively does better. So we did this because they were like friends at the end, right? So they were friends, and the students actually do their best, learn with the peers better rather than the teacher or co-teacher, right? So, and also we wanted to make it a little fun and engaging, so that they could, like how we paired them up was based on the locality, based on their friendship, and based on their, like interest in different sports and music. So we paired them up, and now both the students were not only going through the modules together at their own speed, but they were helping each other out whenever they face a roadblock, rather than a co-teacher or assistant teacher coming into play, right? So they were sharing their learning experience as a whole, and also they're bridging the gaps from both ends. Sometimes the higher achieving students would face a problem, and they would work collaboratively and solve the problem. And if they did need help from the teacher, they would reach out to the teacher. Now, after a couple of months, two terminals later, we actually saw I would not say drastic increase in the grade point, but again, significant increase, and the results came out pretty good, excellent. The parents were happy as well, and I think I would give it out to the whole peer-to-peer learning modality along with the technology, right? I think technology did help. But again, technology will not solve all the problems. We need to have the manual intervention or the physical and the human intervention whenever we need. I think that example comes into my right.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, to me, that's innovation, right? I mean, whether it's assisted by technology or a little bit by technology and by observation. Now, I have heard quite a bit of peer-to-peer based learning, and how kids learn better from, like people of their similar age. I know Himal, has heard about that. He was talking about that the other day, about a study that was done. Himal, you want to talk about that a little bit? And I want to hear Mark's feedback too on that one. Himal, you're muted.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was.
Yeah, so the peer-to-peer, Sandeep's experimentation at Adhyayan was that, they saw a lot of effects because they were learning from peers. And I know, we were talking about the other day, and you said, there were some studies done. Yeah. Can you please expand upon that?
Yeah, there was actually a very interesting example in India, in Madras, actually Chennai. Right? So there's a public school that was taken under the wings of an IIT campus in Chennai. Right? So what they did was, they were looking at a school that was failing pretty badly, or coming, ranking very, much behind the other peers in the region. So they decided to experiment with one particular way of teaching, which is have the, let's say the 9th grade teach the 7th grade, so T-2. Right? And so when they actually had these students get involved in the teaching, within a semester or two, they found significant improvement in the overall, performance of both the people that were, both the students that were being taught, as well as the students that were doing the teaching. I mean, we all know that the best way to learn is when you start teaching somebody else. So I think that was a very good manifestation of that, right? And also for the ones that were learning, I think it's something to do with the power dynamics, right? To see somebody teaching you that's a lot more approachable, right? And you can ask questions and you're not afraid to do that. Actually was significantly helpful. So so IIT was going to put that out as a model of instruction for the remaining schools in the Chennai region. Right. That was pretty interesting in terms of the peer-to-peer.
Yeah, and we see that model in the US in colleges where, recent graduates from a particular class will, be teaching the other students along with the professor, right? It's all about providing access and making it easier for students to have different options. I don't think one size fits all when it comes to teaching. Mark, have you had any experience around that?
Absolutely. So personally, of course, I had a lot of experience in this when I was doing physics. I became a tutor. So it was an undergraduate college, so all the tutors and TAs were undergrads. So from my sophomore year forward, I was always going back and helping students learn sciences. And I did find that I learned it significantly better by being forced to explain it. And that transition, I was talking about when you transition from one format to another, when you're doing creation, teaching is a way of creating. You're creating a verbal representation of your own, of a concept, and it's forcing you to really understand it to do that. So that always went through. Second, when I started building curriculum, digital curriculum was very new back in those days. I realized that in order to teach somebody when I wasn't there, really forced you to understand the concept, because not only just understand the concept, but you had to kind of predict what the other person was going to be thinking when they looked at your writing, because you weren't there to catch the errors. When you say something and they look at you blankly, you're like, oh, they didn't understand. You don't have that opportunity when you build digital curriculum. And so it forces you to truly understand the concepts. And then some of the work I did later in life looked at peer assessment. So in that case, it's how can one peer in your class give you feedback in a structured way that will not only give the person who's doing the writing a gain, so they get feedback and understand how they can improve their writing, but the ability to evaluate somebody else's writing actually makes the evaluator a much better writing. And the estimate was about half of the learning took place while evaluating somebody else's work, and half was getting the evaluation. And so peer instruction from young ages all the way up to graduate school is pretty impactful and effective.
Okay, no, great. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yeah, so I think we've covered a lot about student development. We're actually, I think we're just getting started, but we're almost, 20 minutes away from being done. So I want to kind of switch a little bit and, just look at it from a parent's perspective a little bit, right? So, Mark, quickly, if you can, in your words, explain, what is a 21st century world-ready student look like? What is the persona of a 21st century world-ready student in today's world?
That's something I'm focused a lot in my current work, is really understanding the skills that somebody needs to be successful. Mm-hmm. And we have a concept called 21st century skills. I don't know if you brought that over, but a lot of it is around, truly understanding critical thinking, problem solving, communication, ability to present, to write, to read critically, and be able to take different concepts from different places and unify them. That on top of course, a solid base of math and language arts gives somebody the ability to go just about wherever they need to go. Obviously, if you want to move up into software development, you have to focus some of your technical skills into software skills, but those core skills are the ones that make people advance. So if you get into software development, for example, but you're not a good presenter, you won't go as far as the person who is able to present their ideas. Even though your software may be better than the other person, they will advance. And that critical thinking is really, part of it. Just listening carefully, understanding what somebody's saying, what's going on, and then creating, a new way to do something is where the skills are. And that's why something like Adhyayan can do in getting kids to engage in the education, in their own learning, and do a lot more than just sort of a sit and get model. They're going to go farther in life.
Right. Yeah, I could see a lot of really awesome experience and conversations that we'll have in Nepal at Adhyayan with Mark when this COVID situation goes away.
There is that.
Yes. But Mark will come to Adhyayan and it's going to be an exciting time. So I think, we've talked about student and focused on that a lot. Let's talk about teachers a little bit. Mark, what do you think about innovation in teaching means in this day and age today?
Speaking of the whole COVID situation, one of the things I've seen is that it's forced some teachers across the US at least to use tech that they weren't comfortable with before. They've been trying to avoid it. Mm-hmm. And they're starting to discover some of the value of it. So one of the things from innovation in teaching that I see as being very important is that they use the technology that their students use. When I first started doing hands-on physics instruction work, we used to bring teachers in for 2 weeks, and we made them go through almost half of the curriculum, just going through all the technology. And they were like, no, I just get up in front and talk. And they're like, no. In you go, you have to use it, you get to learn it. And by the end of the 2 weeks, they were experts for the most part, but they really engage with it. So it's absolutely critical that they're not just talking about it, that they're doing it. When they're communicating and collaborating with their peers, they're doing it using technology. When they're creating things, they're using tech. That gets them into a mindset of, here's all the things I can do. And so I think that's a sort of a base level. And then from there, it's kind of the same skills we talked about before. Think outside the box. It's okay to try new things. It's okay that if you spend a lot of time in something and it doesn't quite work. One of the things we really have to drive is failure is okay as long as you do something from it. You know, I talk to my kids all the time, like, if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
And
Right.
I've failed in many things. I've been successful in a lot more. But that's the kind of attitude that teachers have to have, is that tech is not scary. We use it every day. It's okay to try new things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but you learn something all along. And that's what drives the cycle of innovation.
Right. That's wonderful thought, Mark. I know we've had some issues. You know, we started online education at Adhyayan, but before that, I want to hear from Himal. You know, just your perspective on how we Leapfrog have been supporting technology for teachers in Adhyayan.
Yeah, so I mean, as Mark said as well, teachers are one of the pillars of education. So our people at Leapfrog, they're working with the teachers to train them and make the content personalized for their teaching style. When the school was closed, our people spent a lot of hours on Zoom with the teachers to make them familiar with the subject matter in coding and in project-based learning. But I want to get away from the fallacy that it is a one-way street. Our people understand technology, but they lack the hands-on experience of working with the students and the child's psychology. We've been very impressed with the teachers at Adhyayan and the care and effort they put into working with the students. So we can incorporate their feedback into the content, into the programming modules, and the infrastructure we build for the students and for the teachers. So it's been quite a learning experience for us as well.
Right. Thank you, Himal. And then I know we, you know, had to overnight start Google Classroom and some of these initiatives because of COVID-19. Sandeep, do you want to explain, you know, just some of the challenges and some of the benefits that we've seen and how our, you know, dear teachers have adapted to that? You know, I think it's a beautiful sight to see that, you know, when you're forced to do it, you know, you can actually achieve.
Yeah. So at Adhyayan, actually, from the very early days, right? We had believed and we still believe that technology is the only way to make the future of education safer and better. And the current pandemic, like you mentioned, Chandika, has shown us, not only Adhyayan, the entire community about outside Adhyayan, outside education sector as well, the power and the flexibility that technology provides us in almost every area. So luckily, we had the Google Education Suite from the early days. We had actually registered for it like 3 years back. We started using it slowly. Almost every teacher had the email account, Gmail account. They were slowly adapting to it. But again, we didn't expect the pandemic to come across on such a drastic measure, right? And we actually, what we did was, we were towards the end of the session, academic session. So the government had actually requested us to cut short the session by almost a week and a half. So we did that, and we allowed our teachers to stay home so that they are safe and they could stay with their family. But we requested them to self-learn because we had already provided them modules where they could go and self-learn the different products, different application of Google Education Suite. So they self-learned for almost about 2 weeks and they started teaching each other, right? So when the time came to go live online, they were actually ready. So we use Google Classroom primarily. Now Google has actually embedded the Google Meet into the Google Classroom. So we conduct all the online classes through Google Meet. in the classroom, and it's very easy and convenient to actually collaborate, like we've discussed before in Google Education Suite. We don't use Zoom like we're using in webinar because we didn't want to make our students and parents, like hop into different links and different platforms. So Google is the only platform we use at the moment. And the transition luckily has been very smooth. Thanks to all our teachers who went above and beyond. Some of them have actually were actually and are actually still outside the valley working remotely, and some of them were facing electrical problem, internet problem, but they went above and beyond and worked collaboratively with the team. Uh, but again, this didn't come without challenges, right? So we saw we should not forget that the whole digital divide that was caused at the beginning, we're still sorting it out. Not all the parents, not all the teachers had the tools and devices that to go online smoothly and to teach and learn online smoothly. So our attendance rate right now is around 95%, but we're still missing out. Students, 5% students are still missing out on those aspects. So if we were to focus, right, looking in the future, if we were to focus on online learning and technology, we need to make sure that we have a proper infrastructure laid out, not only internally inside the school or in the school itself, but are the students ready at their house? Are the parents ready with all the proper devices and the services? And also teachers, are the teachers ready with all the tools and trainings and devices at their home and even at the school? So I think we need to make sure of the readiness if we were to completely go online or even think about going blended approach. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, even in the US, there are certain districts that, have these device rental program, borrowing program, right? So yeah, it's a universal problem. Even, it also manifests itself in the US. But we're trying, and, it seems like, we've made a significant amount of progress in that direction. So you talked about blended learning, right? So what is Adhyayan's status in terms of just changing some of the physical spaces, or just getting ready for making maybe you want to talk about makerspace a little bit, where students can learn by doing?
Yeah, so there are two different things, right? So let me talk about the blended learning and what we're trying to do there briefly, and then we can move on to the makerspace. So regarding the blended learning, like I mentioned before, we've started incorporating the blended approach in a small step-by-step, like picking one grade at a time, one subject at a time. And because the infrastructure comes into play again, right? To try out different blended approach, we need to have an expectation that the parents are ready at their house, the students are ready at their house, they have the proper infrastructure laid out. So what we are doing is we are designing labs accordingly. So we are previously we would only call it a computer lab, but now we call it a technology lab because we have VR equipments there, AR equipments there. We have a full suite of curated materials there so that the students can actually go and learn at their own pace. So our technology lab is designed in such a way that students can go at any time and they can learn at their own pace. But again, we're picking one subject, one grade at a time to move towards blended approach. And the makerspace now, right? So like I mentioned before, and you had also mentioned that we follow design thinking. So we focus on project-based learning, and we follow the model of design thinking. We're inspired by the Stanford's D-School model, 5-step process, and at least one project per term. We allow our students to work in a group environment where they can use their use whatever they've learned in different domains, math, science, social. They can incorporate all those learnings into the real life problem solving aspect, right? So once they go through the design thinking process, and when the time comes around building a prototype, right? So we have a garage in school now. So we have an old bus that we've revamped into a garage, and we'll be using that. We are using that for students where they can go and tinker, they can build stuff, right? We don't have a 3D printing machine yet, but we will get there. But we have started building the makerspace. We have Raspberry Pi where the students can go, if they want to use Raspberry Pi to design anything. So yeah, we're slowly building, and we're empowering the students and teachers as well to use the garage and to build stuff. Like Mark said, we can only learn by failing, and learning by doing is the motto, right? So
right, and to me, it sounds like innovation, and seems like, and it's also makes sense. Innovation is a team effort, right? So students, teachers, parents, staff, everybody, contributing to student development. We do have to kind of wrap up in a little bit. I do want to get one last question from Mark, a question answered from Mark. Role of content. Mark, how do you, there's so many different kinds of content available. How do you, when you design systems and curriculums and models, what's a good way to think about getting the right content at the right place?
I always talk about a three-legged stool when it comes to content. So you have, when you're doing instruction, when using technology, you have the content, you have the teacher, and you have the system. And as long as two of those are relatively functional, you can have great results. When you're picking content, first of all, you want to make sure it works with the system that you have. I know it seems obvious, but a lot of times content and tech don't work together. And I know we've worked on projects together where you spent a lot of time and money trying to make them work. Content, as long as it's accurate and you're teaching your kids to be critical readers, that's one of the things I talked about before. One of the skills you need is, can you read critically? So you question. You don't just take it at face value. They're reading through the content and they can look at it and it's relatively accurate, but they're always questioning it. That's good enough. So it's interesting that I've seen a lot of what I would consider moderately good content have great results because the system that you're working with and the teachers can jump in and work together, and they don't try to rely completely on it. So you don't need incredibly expensive content to have great results. You can actually do quite well with whatever you have and get your hands on. And Khan Academy is a great example of that. It's good stuff. Production quality is okay, but it's great results. So,
right.
That's what you're looking for.
Right, exactly. No, that makes sense. I feel like we're just getting started, but we're almost at the end of the time. I do want to see if we have some questions. There's a few. Let me see if I can find something that is interesting. This is interesting just because, Mark, you were part of College Board at one point. So the question is, why is innovation needed for assessment approaches? And how does that help students and parents and student development?
Yeah, when you look at something like the SAT, there's not a lot of technical innovation in that. However, in many of the other exams that are used, at least in the US, there's a lot of different digital question types. And so things like being able to label the diagram of a heart. This is difficult to do in a paper and pen multiple choice, but it's actually quite easy to do when you're dragging and dropping or clicking to say, this is the aorta, this is the ventricle, that's a really good use. And then the system can score and provide feedback in real time.
Right.
One of the things that we created at the College Board, which got released under a different name by a different company, was a real-time feedback on essays. So as you're writing the essay, it was able to read your essay, compare it against thousands of other examples, and start to give you feedback right then, just like an instructor would give you feedback. Right. So that's another example of innovation in assessment. So different types of item types, real-time feedback, and then all the analytics that come behind it, understanding how long people took on a particular question, how many times they changed their mind. This kind of data can help us understand, is somebody guessing and getting it right, or do they actually understand it? So those are the three ways that I'd say is a great way of innovating in assessment.
Wow, wonderful thoughts there. We are actually almost at the end, so I would like to ask each of the panelists to provide a closing remark. So let's start with Sandeep, 30 seconds each.
Yeah. So again, welcome, Dr. Mark, once again to the team. We're really excited to have you on board. And thank you everyone who have worked behind the scene for today's webinar. Thank you very much. And thank you all the panelists and participants. We will continue to learn to innovate. That is the motto of Adhyayan School in the field of education, and share and collaborate with the educators globally in the coming days. Hopefully, we will get out of this pandemic pretty soon, and we can physically meet and collaborate soon as well. Until then, stay safe and take care.
Thank you, Sandeep. Himal?
Sure. I mean, again, Mark, very excited to work with you. I know we've worked in the context of work, but it would be very interesting to work in the context of school and a worthy cause. On this side, in innovation and technology, I hope we can use it to create, or to have inspired teachers, engage students, and involve parents. I think that's a recipe for success, and look forward to having that.
Thank you, Himal. Mark?
Well, it's just been a great pleasure to join the team. I've always admired your work and what you're doing with the kids and the parents and the school. And I'm just thrilled to be part of it. So, and I am looking forward to coming over. I've been to that side of the world many times, but never to Kathmandu. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. We're happy you're on board as well. So on behalf of Adhyayan, I would like to thank all of our panelists today one more time, and all the attendees. Hopefully, our audience has a better understanding of how Adhyayan will continue to invest in using innovative methods and create better student outcomes. That's ultimately our goal. We will continue to host webinars like these in future. And again, appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.